Hi, and welcome to the 6th episode of Autism Talk TV. I'm here with Jack Robison, fellow Aspergian, and son of the author of Look Me in the Eye. So, Jack, why don't you tell everyone about the episode that they're about to see?
Well, we interviewed Steve Silberman, who is a writer and contributing editor for Wired magazine, and we asked him about an article he wrote about 10 years ago called The Geek Syndrome, which is about autism in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen the article, it's a very popular article and is referenced a lot by people in both the geek world and also in the Asperger world, although I assume those two worlds overlap. Anyway, let's go to the clip of Steve. Roll it.
Sometime in the year 2000, I was on a cruise ship with a bunch of programmers in Alaska. And one of the people on the boat was Larry Wall, the inventor of Perl, a very well-known open source programming language. And I was writing an article basically about that cruise. And I asked Larry if I could come to interview him after the cruise was over. And he said yes. But I should tell you, we have a profoundly autistic daughter. And I didn't have any experience with people on the spectrum before. I didn't know exactly why he was, preparing me for that, but I thought, okay. So I went and interviewed Larry, and in fact, his daughter wasn't at home that day, and et cetera. So a few months later, I was writing about someone else, another very gifted technology person in Silicon Valley. And I asked him if I could come over and interview him at his house. And he said, I should tell you that we have a very autistic daughter. And I thought, that's an odd thing to hear a couple of times in, a couple of months. I wonder what this means. So I was telling that story to a friend of mine sitting in a cafe in San Francisco. And the person at the next table said, oh my God, you don't know what's happening? And I said, what's happening? And she said, there's an epidemic of autism in Silicon Valley. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, nobody knows about it, but I'm a special ed teacher, and I'm seeing many more autistic kids in my classes than I used to. And I thought, well, that's odd. I'll check that out, because since I was a writer for Wired magazine, anything that was happening in Silicon Valley was of interest. And it was, particularly of interest to me that this funny coincidence had happened in the last couple of months. So I started a long research process to figure out if it was true that there was, quote unquote, an epidemic of autism in Silicon Valley. What's interesting is that 10 years later, I don't know if it's true even now. And in fact, I think we still don't know exactly why the rates of autism diagnoses are rising. But what I do know is that I wrote a story called The Geek Syndrome that was published in Wired, and I have never gotten so much response to an article that I got to that article. In fact, every couple of weeks I still get email about it, even though it was an article that came out, almost 10 years ago in a magazine, which is nearly unheard of. Usually the human memory for magazine articles is about 2 weeks after an article comes out. But I have seen copies of that article that had been, copied multiple times on Xerox machines. Many people had told me that they gave that article to their parents or to their kids to explain what life is like on the spectrum. Because I don't only talk about autism in Silicon Valley, but I talk a lot about basically historical approaches to the spectrum and different ways that it's been viewed. And I interviewed a bunch of families who had autistic kids and talked to a bunch of parents who self-diagnosed after their kids were diagnosed, etc. So I ended up writing another article on people on the spectrum a few years later, specifically about savant abilities. The main point is that article never left my mind, and I basically thought that every paragraph in it wanted more information behind it. Like it was like every paragraph in that article was a potential door that I could use to examine history, examine the ways that people on the spectrum have been mistreated, misconceived all these years, Also looked at the ways that autism itself was a window into the larger question of neurodiversity. And so every time I thought I should really write more about that, or perhaps write a book about it, my time ended up getting taken up by writing another article, whatever the next subject was. And but finally now, almost 10 years later, I have the time and the space in my life to go into all of the subjects that I brought up in that article much more deeply. And that's what brought me to Autreat, was that even though I had gotten to know autistic people over the years and had spent time with the families that I wrote about, I had never been in a large group of autistic people. And I thought that even though, in a sense, I would be an outsider, that it would be really a privilege just to be here, and not as any kind of authority on anything, more like a completely stupid idiot with open ears and an open mind, and just be around people on the spectrum enjoying each other's company.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed Steve's interview. Next week we'll have part 2.
Part 2 is about Aspergian inventions and historically significant things that Aspergians have done.
Name one famous Aspergian invention, Jack.
BitTorrent.
That's how I get all my movies.
Yeah.
I know that.
The ones that I've already bought.
Yes, the ones that I've already purchased. I get a backup copy through BitTorrent. Anyway, I hope you guys will check back next week for part 2 of Steve's interview. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.